Hey guys, tonight we drift back several thousand years to a time before electric lights, before phones, and long before anyone decided it was a good idea to microwave noodles at midnight. You're standing beside the Yellow River, the cradle of ancient Chinese civilization, wrapped in the hush of early dawn. Mist curls across the water, thick enough that it blurs the horizon into watercolor. The world is slow, patient, and perfectly ordinary in that ancient, enduring way. You probably wouldn't survive this time period for more than a week. There's no running water, no bug spray, and your shoes are, well, non-existent. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, drop your location and local time in the comments below. It's always fascinating to see where in the world everyone's drifting off from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The air smells of wet clay and river reeds. You stand barefoot at the edge of the Yellow River, or, as it was once called, the River Mother. The mud beneath your toes is soft, silky, almost warm. Behind you, faint shapes move through the mist. Early risers with baskets, clay pots, and fishing nets slung across their backs. The rhythmic slosh of paddles breaks the silence, followed by the hollow creak of bamboo rafts pushing off into the current. This place, this long golden ribbon of earth, is where Chinese civilization first took root. Around you, the land is lush and wide, cut through by streams and irrigation ditches, fields dotted with thatched huts. The year, if you had to guess, might fall somewhere between 3000 and 1500 BCE, during the late Neolithic and early Bronze Age. Names like Yangshao and Longshan aren't yet part of local gossip, but someday historians will use them to divide eras and pottery styles the way we now divide fashion trends. You watch as the first rays of sunlight slide down the river's surface. The reflection looks like liquid bronze, a quiet foreshadowing of the metal that will soon define whole dynasties. You hear the faint chatter of children, their laughter blending with the splash of water birds. A fisherman tosses his net, a circle of glistening thread that flutters for a moment before disappearing beneath the current. People here depend entirely on the Yellow River. It's generous, yes. Its annual floods leave behind thick layers of fertile silt, but it's also unpredictable. Too much rain upriver, and this serene morning could turn catastrophic by dusk. The locals even have a saying, though it doesn't exist in writing yet. The Yellow River brings both life and loss. You can imagine the quiet resignation in their tone, the same kind you use when your phone updates itself right before you need to leave. In the village nearby, life begins to stir. Smoke rises from hearths where women grind millet with heavy stone pestles. The sound is rhythmic: thud, scrape, pause, thud again, like a sleepy heartbeat. Dogs bark lazily at chickens that refuse to be herded. Men step into the morning fog carrying hoes and wooden plows. You walk beside them, careful not to disturb their rhythm, listening as they hum low tunes, half song, half superstition, to keep misfortune away. A mainstream historical fact slips quietly into this picture. Archaeological evidence suggests that by this time, communities along the Yellow River were already developing early forms of organized agriculture, cultivating millet and wheat with irrigation systems simple yet ingenious. Historians believe this sedentary life marked a shift from wandering tribes to structured societies, the first hints of what would later become dynasties. You notice, though, that these people are not without humor. One old man gestures toward a crooked clay jar sitting by a hut. "Don't drink that," he jokes, though you don't understand his exact words. Later, you'll learn it's a form of millet beer, slightly sour, slightly smoky. It's one of the earliest fermented drinks in human history. It probably tastes like disappointment, but it's safer than the river water. As you wander, you find an elder sitting near a fire mending a fishing net. His face is lined, calm, and deeply familiar. The kind of expression that suggests he's seen the river flood, recede, and flood again. He motions for you to sit. The smoke drifts lazily upward, carrying the smell of charred reeds and wet rope. Somewhere, a baby cries. Somewhere else, someone laughs. You realize that daily life here isn't all that different from yours, except everything happens slower, softer, and with far more mud. A quirky detail, some villagers believe the river itself is alive, a colossal dragon winding across the plains, its breath forming the mist you stand in. They say that when the dragon stirs in anger, floods rise, and when it sleeps, crops thrive. You glance down at the water again, and for a moment, you could almost believe it. Historians still argue whether this dragon belief predates organized religion or emerged from it. But what's clear is that nature here isn't something to conquer, it's something to appease. Offerings are made, tiny figurines molded from clay, bits of grain, even strands of hair. They're placed at the riverbank with whispered prayers for calm waters. You might roll your eyes, but when you've seen the Yellow River in full flood, turning entire fields into brown oceans, you'd probably start whispering too. The sun climbs higher, burning away the fog. The color of the landscape changes from soft gray to honey gold. Villagers move like shadows through the brightness, tending to animals, patching roofs, collecting reeds. You notice that everyone seems to know what to do, even the children. There's a kind of unspoken rhythm, an order that doesn't need words. You walk along the river path where reeds sway gently in the breeze. The air hums with the sound of cicadas. A water buffalo snorts nearby, its dark hide glistening. A boy sits beside it, tossing pebbles into the shallows. You think about how much of human history was shaped by such ordinary moments. How the great dynasties to come, the Jia, Shang, and Zhou, will all rise from these simple beginnings. Empires are built not on war first, but on the quiet repetition of daily work, planting, fishing, surviving. As afternoon light stretches long across the water, you follow a woman carrying a basket of reeds. She pauses to look at the river with an expression that's hard to read, part respect, part suspicion. It listens, she might say if you asked. The river always listens. You don't reply. You just stand there, the soft rush of current filling your ears, the wind tracing lines in the tall grass. Later, as the sky turns amber, the village gathers near a communal fire. Someone brings out a crude drum, a hollowed log with stretched hide. The beat is slow, hypnotic, blending with the rhythm of insects. Children chase one another in circles, elders share quiet stories. You catch fragments about a flood that once swallowed half the valley, and a hero who built dikes with bare hands. The story sounds impossibly grand, but then that's how legends begin. A stray thought crosses your mind. What if this story, passed from mouth to mouth beside small fires like this one, eventually grows into the myth of Yu the Great, the legendary founder of the Xia dynasty? Historians still argue whether Yu ever existed, or if he's a composite of countless anonymous flood fighters who left no names behind. Either way, you're witnessing the seed of a story that will survive thousands of years longer than any hut here will. Night falls gently. The stars appear faintly, scattered like rice grains across the velvet sky. The river glows dimly under moonlight, silver and still. You lie back on the grass, hearing the rustle of leaves and distant laughter fading into the dark. The world is quiet again, timeless, suspended between breath and dream. The Yellow River murmurs softly beside you, and for the first time, you understand why people called it a mother. It nurtures, it punishes, it remembers. And somewhere in that endless cycle of silt and flood, you begin to drift, not just through time, but toward sleep itself. The morning haze fades into a pale blue sky, and as you rise from your patch of grass near the riverbank, you feel the world warming around you. The air is filled with the smell of damp earth and wood smoke, a sign that breakfast fires are burning across the village. Your bare feet sink into the cool soil as you walk toward the cluster of homes ahead, each one shaped like a small mound rising from the land, as if the earth itself had decided to build a community. The homes are humble but ingenious. Most are made from a mixture of packed mud, straw, and reeds, built half sunken into the ground to keep them cool in summer and warm in winter. You step closer to one and notice how smooth the walls are, plastered carefully with a mixture of clay and ash that almost gleams in the light. The roofs are thatched with wild grasses, layered thick to keep out rain. It's not glamorous, but it works. You run a hand along the wall. It's warm, rough, and solid, the prehistoric version of good insulation. A woman steps out of a doorway, blinking in the sunlight. She smiles faintly, her hands dusted with flour, and waves you in. The doorway is low, and you have to duck to enter. Inside, the air smells faintly of millet porridge and smoke. The interior is dim but cozy. The floor is earthen and cool beneath your feet. A small hearth flickers in the corner, its smoke escaping through a hole in the roof. Around it are pots, some with soot-blackened bottoms, others newly shaped, drying in the shadows. You can hear muffled chatter outside, the lazy rhythm of daily life. Someone is chopping reeds. Someone else is shouting at a goat. It's quiet, but not silent. This village hums like a slow heartbeat. In this era, homes are not just shelters. They are living, breathing reflections of survival. Every inch of space has a purpose. The small pit in the center is for warmth and cooking. A raised platform serves as both bed and storage. Clay jars line the edges, holding grain, dried vegetables, and fermented drinks. In one corner, a woven mat of bamboo strips lies rolled up, ready for the next night's sleep. You sit near the fire while your host stirs the pot. Steam curls upward, and the faint sweetness of millet fills the room. She ladles a bowl and offers it to you. It's thick, warm, and bland, but comforting, like oatmeal with none of the fun. You thank her with a nod, though she doesn't understand your words. Communication here happens through gestures, glances, and rhythm. You point to the ceiling, admiring the neat weaving of the thatch, and she chuckles softly, an unspoken thank you for noticing the craftsmanship. Outside, a group of men and children are mixing mud with their feet, stomping and laughing, preparing materials for a new house. You wander out to watch. The process is mesmerizing. They shovel wet earth into a pit, mix in straw and water, and then stomp it into a thick paste. The mud squishes up between their toes. You try it, hesitantly, and it's surprisingly fun, like ancient pottery making meets leg day. One child tosses a handful of mud at your leg, and the entire group erupts in laughter. Civilization, it seems, has always loved a good prank. As you help shape the walls of the new home, you notice that everything is done communally. There's no contractor, no blueprint, no building inspector, just hands, mud, and muscle memory passed down through generations. When someone's house collapses after a flood, the whole village rebuilds it. That's the rhythm here. Collective care born out of shared vulnerability. A mainstream historical fact drifts quietly through your thoughts. Archaeological digs along the Yellow River, particularly sites from the Yangshao and Lungsham cultures, show clusters of semi-subterranean houses arranged in tight circles or rectangles. Each one had hearths, storage pits, and walls plastered with clay. This uniformity suggests not only architectural planning, but also early forms of social coordination, a community bound not by royal decree, but by necessity and habit. As you lean against one nearly finished wall, your host points out the roof supports, long bamboo poles lashed together with reeds. Bamboo, she explains through gestures, is everything: walls, mats, tools, even cooking implements. It's the plastic of the ancient world, renewable, light, and annoyingly useful. She even pulls a small bamboo scoop from her belt, carved with tiny decorative lines. You take it, and she grins, because of course you're holding a prehistoric spoon selfie moment. Nearby, a man squats beside a clay pot, shaping it with slow shore movements. The clay turns between his hands, moist and obedient. He presses his thumb to form a rim, then taps it rhythmically with a flat stick. "Listen," he seems to say, "it tells you when it's right." You bend closer, hearing the dull thump, the texture changing slightly beneath his fingertips. This isn't just craft, it's a conversation between hand and earth. A quirky historical tidbit floats up. Some early settlements used crushed shells or animal bones mixed into their clay to strengthen pottery. It sounds bizarre, but it worked. Archaeologists have even found faint fingerprints still pressed into those vessels, a literal touch of someone who lived 5,000 years ago. You imagine one of those hands might have looked like this man's, strong and calloused, never imagining that one day his fingerprints would sit under a glass case in a museum. You step outside again, blinking against the sunlight. The roofs glimmer with dew, and the village looks almost pretty in its simplicity, like a cluster of earthy mushrooms sprouting along the river. Children chase a small dog through the dust. A pair of ducks waddle lazily toward the water. The smell of freshly baked flatbread wafts from a hearth, and your stomach growls because apparently civilization invented carbs early and never looked back. As the afternoon settles in, a group of villagers gather to repair a collapsed roof. You watch as they work seamlessly, passing reeds, tying knots, balancing on beams. There's laughter, teasing, and that universal sigh of teamwork fatigue. One man slips slightly and lands in a pile of straw. The others laugh so hard that one nearly drops his rope. You can't help smiling. Ancient or modern, group projects are equally chaotic. Still, you notice something fascinating. Despite the apparent simplicity of life, there's order here, a quiet social logic. The elders advise, the adults labor, the children imitate. No one commands, yet everyone knows their place. You realize that these homes, these routines, these mud walls, they're more than architecture. They're early blueprints of society itself. Historians still argue whether these early settlements had formal leadership or were governed by collective decision-making. Some believe small councils of elders led each village. Others think leadership rotated seasonally, depending on who had food or luck. Either way, what you're seeing feels balanced: cooperation over competition, survival over ambition. A rare equilibrium that would eventually give way to hierarchy and dynasty. As the sun dips low, the village glows gold again. The walls seem to hold the day's warmth, radiating it back as evening cools. Families gather outside their homes to share dinner. Bowls of porridge, roasted vegetables, maybe a small fish caught from the river. Smoke rises from dozens of small fires, blending into one continuous plume above the rooftops. The sound of soft conversation fills the air. You walk quietly between the homes, feeling like an invisible observer. A child waves from a doorway, clutching a bamboo toy shaped like a bird. His laughter echoes faintly, pure and bright. Somewhere, a woman hums a tune while spinning fibers into thread. The world slows, and the edges of everything blur slightly in the dimming light. You find a spot near one of the homes and sit down. The mud beneath you is cool again, damp from the evening dew. You watch the faint shimmer of firelight spilling through the cracks of the walls, and for a moment, you realize that these simple structures, made of dirt, grass, and patience, have endured longer than most monuments ever will. Civilizations rise and fall, but the instinct to build a home, to gather warmth and safety around the small flame, that never changes. The stars appear, faint and trembling above the river plain. Somewhere in the darkness, an owl calls. You pull your knees close and listen to the low hum of the night, the soft sighs of a world still learning how to be human. Morning returns to the river like a slow exhale. The mist from the water drifts inland, curling over the roofs of the village until everything looks slightly dreamlike, as if you've woken inside a watercolor painting. The faint hum of insects begins before the sun even rises fully, and already people are moving. You stretch, rubbing the stiffness from your neck, and realize that in this world, there's no such thing as sleeping in. The day starts when the river says it does. The farmers are already at work. You follow a small group as they head toward the fields. Men and women carrying tools slung over their shoulders. Children trailing behind with baskets and jars of water. The path is narrow, packed hard by centuries of footsteps. The earth smells sweet and damp, the kind of smell that sticks to your skin. A water buffalo lumbers past you, its horns polished smooth from years of use. Its handler clucks softly, guiding it toward the paddies. You watch the animal's hooves sink into the mud with a satisfying squelch. Out here, life revolves around grain, millet mostly, a sturdy little crop that doesn't complain much, even when the weather misbehaves. You step into a field where stalks of millet sway lightly in the morning wind. Their tops glimmer with dew, catching the first light like tiny gold sparks. Farmers move among them, pulling weeds, checking for pests, whispering quiet observations to one another that sound like poetry disguised as farm talk. The work looks simple at first, but you quickly realize it's anything but. Wooden hoes dig into soil that's more clay than dirt. Each swing lands with a dull thud. Irrigation channels snake between plots, guiding precious water from the yellow river. You kneel beside one, letting the cool current trickle over your fingers. It's a clever system, hand-dug trenches leading to small basins, some blocked by flat stones that can be lifted or lowered to control flow. There are no pumps, no valves, just gravity, timing, and intuition. A mainstream historical fact drifts into your thoughts. Evidence from early dynastic sites shows that these irrigation systems were among the first in East Asia. They allowed stable agriculture and supported growing populations. Without them, there might never have been enough food to sustain the rise of the Xia and Shang dynasties. You glance around, watching a farmer adjust a small stone gate in the trench. This is where civilization happens, not in palaces, but in muddy fields under the morning sun. You join in for a while, mostly for curiosity's sake. The hoe feels heavy, unbalanced. You try mimicking their technique, but the mud suctions your feet so tightly that you nearly topple over. One of the farmers laughs, shaking his head, and gestures for you to watch instead. City hands, his grin seems to say, even though the concept of cities hasn't fully formed yet. You take the hint. Nearby, a group of women are planting new seeds. They work in rhythm. Dip, drop, pat, move. Their fingers are fast and sure, each motion practiced since childhood. They hum softly, a tune you don't recognize but instantly feel calm hearing. It's repetitive, almost hypnotic. You can imagine how it keeps time, how it makes endless labor feel less like toil and more like breathing. One woman gestures toward a patch of reeds by the water, explaining through pantomime that it's not all millet here. Rice is beginning to take root in wetter areas, though it's still experimental. It needs more water, more patience. Too stubborn, she mutters, pretending to scold the plant. You smile. Farming, it seems, always involves talking to your crops, whether it's rice or houseplants. A quirky detail you notice, the farmers wear little talismans tied around their wrists. Small bones, carved stones, sometimes teeth from animals. They say these charms protect against bad harvests and mischievous river spirits who like to borrow tools left in the fields. You ask, silently, whether those spirits ever return the tools. The woman shrugs. Sometimes, her smile says, which is probably ancient for no, but we keep hoping. By midday, the sun has risen high enough to turn the air thick and shimmering. You follow the farmers to a shaded area where they rest. Someone passes around the clay jug filled with cloudy liquid, fermented millet again. It smells faintly like vinegar, but tastes surprisingly refreshing, like a slightly confused lemonade. Everyone drinks from the same jug, laughing when someone spills a little down their chin. The sense of community here is effortless. They share flat cakes baked earlier that morning, and dried strips of fish pulled from woven baskets. The flavors are earthy and smoky. You chew slowly, the taste of grain mixing with dust and sunlight. Around you, the conversation drifts lazily. Discussions about the weather, the river's level, a neighbor's stubborn goat. Nothing urgent, nothing anxious, just the small talk of survival. Historians still argue whether this agricultural rhythm was organized under central leadership or remained local and communal. Some scholars think the earliest dynastic rulers began as irrigation coordinators, basically managers of water, a simple job that became divine authority. You can imagine how that might happen. Whoever controls the flow of the river controls life itself. Power seeps in like water through soil. In the distance, you see small granaries, raised storage huts built on wooden stilts. Their sides are lined with clay to keep out rats and moisture. A man climbs up one with a bundle of dried millet and carefully adds it to the pile. It's their lifeline against winter and flood years. You can almost feel the collective anxiety that must ripple through the village whenever harvests run thin. The smell of stored grain fills the air, a warm, toasty scent that somehow feels like safety. You wander toward the far side of the field, where a narrow ridge separates cultivated land from wild grass. Beyond it, the landscape changes. Rolling hills, patches of forest, and occasional signs of wild boar rooting through the undergrowth. You realize how small this village really is in the scale of the land, how fragile its grip on stability remains. The river giveth, and the river taketh away. You've seen enough of it now to understand that this delicate balance defines every breath here. A shout pulls you back to the fields. One of the younger farmers has spotted something in the mud, a frog, fat and slick, escaping from an irrigation trench. He scoops it up triumphant, and everyone cheers. Dinner, apparently. The frog blinks once, unimpressed, and you can't help thinking that ancient cuisine had a strong sense of irony. As the afternoon wanes, the farmers finish their work. They carry bundles of harvested stalks on their shoulders, walking slowly but content. Dust rises behind them like a golden halo. The river glimmers in the distance, lazy and wide. A gentle breeze carries the scent of wet grass and smoke. You follow the group back toward the village, your feet caked with drying mud that cracks as you walk. It feels grounding, literally. Back in the village, the harvest is laid out to dry. The courtyard becomes a sea of golden grain, spread across woven mats. Chickens start between them, pecking at stray seeds until shooed away. The air hums with a quiet pride. It's the same satisfaction you feel when finishing a long day of work, the kind that doesn't need celebration because the proof is right there in front of you. As the sun dips toward the horizon, painting the river orange, the villagers gather again near the water. Someone beats a slow rhythm on a drum, signaling the end of the day. The sound rolls softly across the fields, blending with the croak of frogs and the sighing of the wind. You watch them bathe, wash tools, and chat about the day's yield. The laughter is easy, unhurried. A boy splashes his friend, who retaliates with a bucket full of water, and soon the river is filled with shouts and laughter. Civilization, you think, began with moments like these, muddy, joyful, unpolished. The moon begins to rise, pale and round above the horizon. The farmers finish cleaning their tools, leaning them against walls with quiet reverence. Tomorrow, they'll return to the same fields, repeat the same motions, sing the same songs. It's not monotony, it's continuity. The endless rhythm of earth and water, hunger and harvest, effort and rest. You sit by the riverbank once more, dipping your tired hands into the cool current. The reflection of the moon trembles on the surface. Somewhere upstream, the water is already carving new paths, bringing fresh silt for next year's planting. You close your eyes, listening to the whisper of reeds and the faint echo of a farmer's song carried by the wind. In the darkness, it feels timeless, like the river itself hums a lullaby older than words, older than dynasties. You breathe in, smell the damp soil and smoke, and exhale softly, sinking into the slow, ancient rhythm of another perfect, ordinary day along the Yellow River. By the time the morning haze burns away, the air is alive with sound. Wooden carts creak, vendors shout, and the steady rhythm of feet fills the packed earth streets. You follow the noise as it rises from the heart of the village. Today is market day. It's not exactly a grand bazaar like the stories of Silk Road trade that will come centuries later. It's humbler, more intimate, a meeting of neighbors who already know one another's dogs by name. Still, the atmosphere feels electric in its own quiet way, like a festival disguised as daily routine. You step through the main path, ducking under a hanging reed curtain that marks the market entrance. The scent hits you first: smoke, herbs, fermenting grain, and roasted fish. Somewhere nearby, someone is frying thin cakes on a flat stone, the oil hissing and popping in the heat. Your stomach growls immediately, betraying your modern habit of eating breakfast without first plowing a field. A woman behind the stall grins knowingly and hands you a small cake wrapped in leaves. It's chewy, faintly sweet, with hints of sesame and river salt. You thank her, but she waves off your gratitude. Payment enough is your enjoyment. The market stretches along the main dirt road, framed by bamboo poles that hold up makeshift awnings. The ground beneath your feet is warm and uneven, pressed smooth by centuries of footprints. You wander past baskets piled high with millet, beans, onions, and long green stalks of garlic. Each item sits in neat circles as if arranged by some unspoken aesthetic rule, practical and pleasing. Children dart between stalls, clutching sticks of honeyed fruit. Dogs nap in the shade of carts. The energy is calm but constant. A group of men squat near a stall selling woven mats. They argue softly over price, though it's more a social ritual than genuine conflict. One man insists his own mats are finer. The other just laughs and counters with a story about how last time the first man's mats attracted a family of mice. Everyone chuckles, and the trade ends with a handshake and a splash of millet beer to seal the deal. You realize bartering here is more about connection than currency. A mainstream historical fact hums beneath the scene. Early dynastic economies along the Yellow River relied primarily on barter. Coins wouldn't appear until much later, around the Zhou period, and even then, trade was as much about relationships as value. Trust, gossip, and reputation were as real as silver. You notice how every exchange here is accompanied by laughter, small talk, or a compliment? It's not just commerce, it's community maintenance. You stop beside a stall selling pottery. The merchant, an older woman with quick hands and a mischievous grin, displays rows of smooth, patterned bowls. Some are polished black, others reddish-brown, their designs geometric and hypnotic. She gestures for you to pick one up. It's surprisingly light, cool against your palms. She points to a faint spiral design and taps her temple, explaining that it keeps evil spirits dizzy so they can't linger near your food. You can't tell if she's joking or serious. Probably both. Next to her, a young man sells bamboo flutes. The soft notes he plays drift over the noise of the market like ripples over water. You pause, listening as he demonstrates one tune, a simple melody that feels both melancholy and strangely comforting. A few nearby traders hum along absent-mindedly, the way people today tap their feet to a familiar song on the radio. You catch yourself swaying a little too. The musician smiles, clearly pleased with himself. The crowd thickens as you move toward the center, where the smell of cooked food grows stronger. Someone's grilling fish wrapped in lotus leaves. Another is steaming dumpling-like bundles tied with reeds. You spot a large clay pot bubbling over a small fire. Inside, what looks like soup made with root vegetables and maybe some wild herbs. The vendor ladles a portion into a wooden bowl and hands it to a customer who sighs contentedly after the first sip. You can't resist trying it too. The flavor is earthy and mild, with a faint tang of fermented bean. It's simple, nourishing, the culinary equivalent of a warm hug. Ancient Chinese cooks sometimes used fermented soy mash or fish sauce centuries before written recipes existed. Archaeologists have found remnants of these condiments sealed in pots, precursors to soy sauce. So yes, even 5,000 years ago, humanity already understood the magic of umami. You wander deeper into the market and notice that it's not just local produce being traded. One stall displays polished stones and fragments of jade, rare, gleaming, obviously not from this region. The merchant explains through gestures that traders bring them from far to the west, beyond mountains you can barely imagine. Another vendor shows off pieces of shimmering silk, thin, almost translucent. From the south, she says proudly, though it's hard to tell whether that's true or just good marketing. Historians still argue whether these early trade links were direct or connected through a chain of small exchanges. But either way, it's clear that even in this small settlement, the wider world already trickles in through threads, stones, and whispers. You realize that the market isn't just about survival, it's about curiosity. Each object here carries a story from elsewhere, a subtle reminder that no civilization grows in isolation. You stop at a stall where a man sells herbal powders. His table is covered in small clay jars labeled with symbols you can't read. He opens one and lets you smell it. The aroma is sharp and earthy, ginger maybe, or something like it. Good for stomach, he says, patting his belly with a grin. You nod, pretending to understand his mixture of words and gestures. Another jar smells like dried flowers. Sleep, he says, then mimes snoring dramatically. The nearby customers burst into laughter. You can't help but laugh too, because even in the Neolithic era, someone's trying to sell you a cure for insomnia. As the day stretches on, the heat intensifies. The awnings flutter lazily in the faint breeze, and people start to move slower, their conversations more languid. You find a shaded spot beside a basket seller stall, sitting cross-legged as you watch the flow of humanity pass. A woman scolds her husband for overpaying. A child negotiates fiercely for an extra piece of dried fruit. Two old friends greet each other like brothers after years apart. It's messy, noisy, alive, and utterly human. You glance at the sky. The sunlight shimmers through dust, turning everything golden. A small procession moves through the street, perhaps a traveling storyteller or a musician group. They carry drums, rattles, and a small banner decorated with simple drawings. People follow them curiously, clapping to the rhythm. You trail behind, the drum beat syncing with your heartbeat. The storyteller begins, a tale of a river spirit who fell in love with a mortal woman only to vanish with the floodwaters each spring. His voice rises and falls like waves. The crowd listens, enchanted. It occurs to you that stories, like trade, are the real currency of this place. Every jar, every tool, every song carries meaning beyond its surface. You look around the crowd, faces glowing in the soft light, and think, this is civilization. Not walls or kings, but shared imagination. As the sun begins to lower, traders start to pack up. The air cools and the noise softens to a murmur. People linger, reluctant to leave, chatting as they load their baskets onto carts. You buy one last treat, a small bundle of sticky rice sweetened with honey and wrapped in leaves. It's surprisingly delicious, like dessert and memory combined. When the last stall closes, the market street returns to silence. Only faint footprints and a few dropped grains remain on the ground. The sky deepens into rose and violet, the river reflecting streaks of color like molten glass. You walk toward it slowly, the evening breeze brushing against your skin, carrying the mingled scents of food and smoke. In the distance, you can hear laughter still echoing from the village center. Someone plays a flute again, softer this time, almost wistful. The day dissolves into dusk, and the market's hum fades into the sound of flowing water. You close your eyes for a moment and let it all settle. The warmth, the chatter, the comfort of a day that feels full in the simplest way. You exhale, smiling faintly. Somewhere behind you, a dog barks, and the first stars blink to life above the quiet rooftops. The market will rise again tomorrow, just as it has for generations, a living heartbeat along the Yellow River, steady, familiar, endlessly human. As dusk settles softly over the village, the market streets empty and the air cools. You follow narrow paths back to the clusters of homes. Smoke curls lazily from each hearth, carrying scents of roasted grain and dried herbs. Families gather inside, preparing for the evening rituals that weave together daily life and reverence for the past. You pause at one home in particular, drawn by the soft glow of a small fire and the scent of burning incense. This is where you glimpse the quiet heartbeat of domestic spirituality along the Yellow River. Inside, a mother arranges a small altar at the far corner of the room. The altar is simple, a flat clay platform with a few carved wooden figures, a bowl of rice, and a thin stick of incense. She kneels, hands pressed together, eyes closed. The smoke spirals upward, curling and twisting as if it has a mind of its own. Her children watch silently, learning the gestures through observation rather than instruction. Every movement is deliberate, rhythmic, and careful. You feel the weight of continuity here, the unbroken transmission of ritual across generations, long before writing or formal codified religion dominates the landscape. The family's reverence is palpable, yet it carries the subtle humor of everyday life. The youngest child yawns loudly and tries to mimic the adult's posture, elbows sticking out awkwardly. The mother glances at him, lips twitching in a half-smile, and adjusts his posture gently. You realize that even sacred routines are layered with humanity, patience, correction, and small, unavoidable amusement. A mainstream historical fact settles quietly into the scene. Many early Chinese households practiced ancestor veneration, leaving offerings at small shrines to honor family spirits. These rituals predate organized temples and reflect a deep belief in the presence of forebears within daily life. Scholars still argue whether such practices arose primarily from spiritual conviction or practical social cohesion. After all, honoring ancestors reinforced family hierarchy and obligations as much as it did metaphysical belief. The smell of incense mingles with the aroma of millet porridge simmering nearby. You notice that ritual and sustenance overlap seamlessly. Offerings aren't always elaborate. They can be a simple portion of food, a cup of water, a pinch of rice. The message is quiet but unmistakable. The past is alive, and you are a part of it. You wander to a neighboring home where the evening is unfolding differently, but no less sacredly. A small fire casts shadows over clay walls, and a man is carefully rolling bamboo strips into a scroll-like bundle. Though writing hasn't fully developed, symbolic marks etched on bamboo or wood serve as memory aids, lists of offerings, records of harvests, or notations of important dates. He pauses to dip his brush in a mixture of soot and water, tracing faint symbols. You watch, fascinated. These small acts of notation hint at the complex administration that will eventually underpin dynasties, long before emperors rise or dynastic histories are recorded. In some early households, families would use figurines or carvings to represent ancestors or spirits, sometimes even dressing them in miniature robes or hats. It might seem whimsical to modern eyes, but in that simple materiality, the past felt tangible and immediate. You imagine the reverence for such figures, combined with the lightheartedness of small children dragging them across the floor like toys. You step outside into the evening air again, just as the river reflects the first silver streaks of moonlight. The village is quiet now, save for the occasional laughter of a child or the distant bark of a dog. Yet beneath this calm, you sense layers of practice and belief. The invisible threads connecting river, home, ancestors, and the people who depend on them. Even the mundane is suffused with meaning. Every bowl, every mat, every incense stick is part of a living tapestry. In one courtyard, a woman carefully arranges small bowls of water beside the hearth. She explains, without words, that the offerings protect against misfortune and invite blessings from unseen spirits. You watch as a breeze shifts the smoke from a nearby incense stick, carrying it over the bowls, and for a moment it feels like the air itself is acknowledging the ritual. The blending of tangible and invisible, a practice of faith, habit, and art, creates a profound stillness that's almost hypnotic. Children play quietly nearby, weaving between legs and hiding behind doorways. They imitate adult gestures, trying to bow correctly, mimic prayers, or light tiny portions of incense. Their imitation is imperfect but earnest, a charming reminder that learning here is immersive, observational, and rhythmic. You watch a young boy knock over a bowl of rice accidentally, the grains scattering like tiny stars across the clay floor. No one scolds him. A soft laugh rises, and the ritual continues, adapting around the child's misstep. Life and tradition coexist in a delicate, flowing balance. Historians still argue whether ancestor veneration evolved primarily from religious belief or from social pragmatism. Some suggest these rituals function to solidify familial hierarchy, ensure property continuity, or even regulate social obligations, while others emphasize the spiritual dimension, the comfort, guidance, and moral accountability provided by reverence for the past. You notice as you wander between homes that perhaps it is both. Humans rarely separate faith from family, devotion from habit. Later, the village gathers near a communal fire for evening storytelling. The tales are neither epic nor dramatic, they are instructive, practical, and comforting, often centering on floods, crops, or clever solutions to everyday challenges. One tale speaks of a mother duck leading her ducklings safely through a flooded rice field. Another tells of a mischievous river spirit who delights in hiding tools. You realize these stories carry subtle lessons: patience, vigilance, and respect for the natural world. You follow an elder to a small garden behind the home, where herbs and vegetables grow in neat rows. He gestures at various plants, some used for food, others for medicinal purposes. Small offerings of water and rice sit at the corners. He hums softly, almost as if coaxing the plants themselves. You kneel beside him and breathe in the mingling smells of soil, leaves, and incense. It's soothing, grounding, a gentle reminder that survival is never purely physical. It's also spiritual, emotional, and ritualistic. A quirky tidbit drifts to mind. Some ancient families believed that the spirits of ancestors could inhabit certain plants. A leaf might carry the essence of a forebear's protection. You laugh softly, imagining that your own houseplants might have secret guardian spirits if you had only remembered to offer them a few grains of rice. As night deepens, the village settles. Fires burn lower, doors close quietly, and the river murmurs softly beyond the homes. You pause one last time in the soft light, looking at a small altar tucked into a corner of a home. The smoke curls upward, carrying with it centuries of unspoken gratitude, small worries, and the persistent heartbeat of a people tethered to their land and history. You inhale deeply, letting the scent of incense, cooking fires, and damp earth mingle with the cool night air. Each breath feels like a rhythm. Inhale, exhale, observe, rest. You sense that the threads binding these families, their rituals, and the river are delicate, yet resilient, just like the soil beneath your feet. The quiet night hums gently, a lullaby of flame, earth, and devotion. You lean back, feeling the softness of the cool clay under your hands, the fading warmth of the day clinging to the walls, and the steady, reassuring presence of ancestors in the small, flickering altars around you. The yellow river continues its patient murmur in the distance, carrying the echoes of lives lived quietly, rhythmically, and deliberately. It is both witness and participant, a constant in a world that spins slowly, with tradition, labor, and quiet devotion marking the passage of time. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the soft night sounds and the lingering scent of smoke and earth lull you toward calm. For a fleeting moment, the lives of these villagers, their routines, their faith, their small joys, become your own, a gentle prelude to the deeper journey still to come. The afternoon sun slants low over the tiled rooftops as you make your way toward a narrow lane lined with workshops. The air smells faintly of smoke, clay, and something metallic, perhaps bronze. You're entering the artisan quarter, a place where the hum of creation fills every open doorway. Here, the world transforms under human hands. Mud becomes pottery, ore becomes tools, and imagination becomes permanence. You pause before a low structure with its door half open. Inside, a potter sits cross-legged, his foot rhythmically pressing a primitive wheel made of stacked discs of wood. The wheel spins lazily, and his hands, broad, steady, calloused, shape a lump of clay into symmetry. You watch the transformation happen slowly, almost hypnotically. The clay trembles, wobbles, then steadies as his thumbs press inward to form a lip. He hums softly as he works, the same note over and over, like a lullaby for the vessel. The pot takes on life, smooth and balanced. A few more minutes, a final spin, and he stops the wheel with a touch. Without ceremony, he lifts the damp piece and sets it beside several others, each slightly different, each beautiful in its imperfection. He glances at you with a faint smile, wiping his hands on a rag. "River clay," he says proudly, tapping the side of one pot. "Good earth." You nod, understanding that in this time, mastery isn't about grand monuments. It's about the intimacy between a person and their materials. The pottery here reflects both practicality and quiet artistry. Most pieces are for storing grain, water, or fermented drink. Some are for cooking or rituals. A few are purely decorative, their swirling patterns echoing waves, fish scales, or curling clouds. Archaeologists later named them Yangshao or Longshan designs, depending on the layer of earth they're found in. But to you, right now, they're just the fingerprint of human creativity, simple, graceful, eternal. A mainstream historical fact hums beneath the wheels turning. By the late Neolithic period, Chinese artisans had already developed fast wheels for pottery and sophisticated kiln firing methods that reached remarkable temperatures. This meant stronger, more durable ceramics, and, in a way, the birth of one of China's oldest and proudest crafts. Long before silk or bronze defined dynasties, clay did. You step out into the street again. Next door, a man hammers bronze at a small forge, the rhythmic clang echoing through the alley. Sparks rise and fade into the sunlight like fireflies. His apprentice pumps a primitive bellows, feeding air into the coals until they glow white hot. On a flat stone lies an assortment of tools, chisels, arrowheads, small mirrors, even an unfinished bell. The air shimmers with heat. You crouch to watch him pour molten bronze from a ladle into a carved clay mold. The liquid metal glows like honey, then quickly dulls as it cools. He taps the mold gently, waiting, patient. "Takes time," he mutters, perhaps to himself, perhaps to you. "Everything good takes time." You nod. He's right. When the mold breaks open, you see a small figurine, a stylized animal, maybe a tiger or a dragon. It's rough now, but once polished, it'll gleam like captured sunlight. The craftsman smiles faintly. "For the temple," he explains, "they say the gods like shine." He winks. "So do customers." You laugh quietly. Some things about human nature never change. A quirky tidbit drifts through your mind. Some early bronze workshops along the Yellow River buried small animal bones or shells beneath their kilns for luck, believing the spirits within them ensured strong metal. Whether superstition or symbolism, you can't help but notice that even the most practical crafts here carry spiritual weight. The act of making isn't just work, it's ceremony. Farther down the lane, another artisan works with bamboo. He strips long stalks, splits them with a thin knife, and weaves them into baskets so tightly that not even water could seep through. The patterns are intricate, cross-hatching, diamonds, waves. He looks up briefly as you pass and gestures for you to try. You take a strand awkwardly and attempt to mimic his movement. It immediately cracks. He chuckles softly. Gentle, he says, guiding your hand, let it bend where it wants. You try again, slower this time. The bamboo yields, smooth and pliant. It's oddly satisfying, like braiding the river itself. You glance around and realize every workshop hums with similar energy, focus, patience, and the faint joy of usefulness. The weaver hums as she threads. The potter sings. The smith curses affectionately at his stubborn metal. The rhythm of work here feels almost like music, each sound blending into the next. As the afternoon deepens, a warm breeze carries the scent of drying clay and smelted metal. The artisans begin to tidy their workspaces, stacking finished goods along the walls. A few customers wander in to pick up orders, bowls, blades, ornaments. One man examines a bronze knife with reverence, tracing its edge as though reading a prayer. For the harvest, he tells the smith, who nods solemnly. It's clear that tools are more than instruments, they're lifelines. Historians still argue whether specialized labor in these early dynasties emerged from individual skill or communal need. Some say it was born of surplus, that when farmers grew enough food, others could afford to focus on craft. Others believe craftsmanship existed earlier, a natural human instinct to shape beauty from necessity. Either way, the result is the same. This street, filled with quiet ambition and rhythmic motion, becomes the heartbeat of civilization. You continue walking until you reach a small open courtyard where several artisans have gathered. They sit in a loose circle, passing around cups of rice beer, laughing and teasing each other about whose work cracked first or whose kiln smoked too much. A woman plays a simple tune on a stringed instrument, the notes lilting and slow. It's a communal pause between labor and rest, a reminder that even the most industrious hands need moments of idleness. You sit beside them, accepting a cup when it's offered. The beer is slightly sour but refreshing. Someone tells a story about how, once, a bronze mirror reflected the face of a ghost. The others laugh, shaking their heads. Maybe your own reflection scared you, one jokes. Another chimes in. Or maybe the ghost liked what it saw. The laughter rolls through the group, easy and unguarded. For a while, you simply sit there, soaking in the warmth of the fading day. The sounds around you, soft laughter, clinking metal, the faint murmur of the river beyond, merge into something almost meditative. You realize that in this moment, civilization isn't loud or grand. It's quiet, cooperative, and deeply human. As the sun sinks, shadows stretch long across the workshop lane. The artisans rise slowly, stretching their backs, sweeping dust from their floors. A few lamps flicker to life, small clay bowls filled with oil, wicks glowing like fireflies. The last rays of light catch the curve of a bronze bell hanging from a beam, turning it momentarily to gold. You take one last look around before heading back toward the main path. Every piece of pottery, every woven basket, every hammered blade stands as silent proof of endurance. None of these people will be remembered by name, yet their work will outlive them by millennia. Their hands, unknown and unrecorded, built the foundations for everything to come. You run your fingers along the cool surface of a clay bowl set aside to dry. It leaves a faint trace of dust on your skin. You think about how fragile it seems, yet how many centuries such pieces have survived, buried, broken, mended, rediscovered. Maybe that's the secret lesson of this place. the beauty of impermanence, and the persistence hidden within it. A breeze rises from the river, carrying with it the scent of wet earth. You breathe deeply, letting the calm settle over you. The artisan's laughter fades behind you as you walk into the amber dusk. Somewhere, a hammer rings one last time before silence falls. The night gathers gently, wrapping the village in its cool arms. Tomorrow, the fires will burn again, the wheels will spin, and the patient rhythm of craft will continue, unhurried, steady, eternal. By the next morning, the sound that wakes you isn't roosters or rushing water, it's laughter. Light, easy, unguarded laughter drifting from a nearby courtyard. You follow it, curious, and find a group of children chasing each other in wide, clumsy circles. Their feet kick up soft clouds of dust that glow gold in the rising sun. A few wooden toys lie scattered nearby, small carved animals, a spinning top, a bamboo hoop. One boy tosses a bundle of rags tied into a ball, shouting triumphantly when his friend misses the catch. You stand for a moment, smiling to yourself. Even here, thousands of years before playgrounds or plastic toys, play thrives effortlessly. An older man, maybe a grandfather, sits on a low stool nearby, carving a new toy with a small knife. His hands move slowly, methodically, shaping a piece of wood into what looks like a bird. He pauses occasionally to blow away the shavings, squinting in the sunlight. When one of the children approaches, he chuckles, showing them the half-finished figure. The child's eyes widen, a mix of awe and impatience. "Almost done," he murmurs. "Good things take time." You smile at the repetition of that phrase. It seems to be the unspoken motto of the whole village. Behind the laughter, you hear a faint rustling sound. A group of women are weaving mats beneath a canopy of reeds, chatting quietly while their hands move in synchronized rhythm. Their conversation flows effortlessly from gossip to advice to gentle teasing. You catch fragments of it. Someone's new baby, someone else's lazy husband, someone's rice wine recipe that apparently could wake the ancestors. The air hums with domestic peace. You wander closer and watch them work. The reeds bend and fold under their fingers, forming a perfect pattern. One woman notices your gaze and laughs. "You want to learn?" she asks. You nod. She hands you a few strands and demonstrates the motion. Under, over, under, pull. It's deceptively simple until you try it yourself. The reeds slip, twist, and finally snap. The women burst into laughter, not unkindly. "You'd make a fine farmer," one says, shaking her head. You grin, bowing slightly in mock defeat. In early dynastic China, weaving and textile work were almost entirely domestic tasks handled by women. Though men dominated farming and politics, women's work sustained the household economy, spinning silk, weaving flax, or braiding straw into sandals. Without their daily labor, the rhythm of life would collapse. You notice how everything here seems to operate on shared rhythm rather than strict hierarchy. Men, women, children all flow through the day in quiet harmony, each doing their part. It's less about authority and more about balance. Nearby, a group of young women kneel by a large wooden tub, washing clothes in soapy water made from crushed beans. The fabric slaps rhythmically against smooth stones. They gossip as they work, occasionally splashing each other with mock outrage. A little girl runs by carrying a clay jug too large for her arms. She trips lightly but steadies herself, determined. One of the women calls after her, half warning, half laughter. The scent of boiling rice drifts through the air. You follow it to a family kitchen, a simple space with a clay hearth and hanging bundles of herbs. The mother stirs a pot with a bamboo ladle while her daughter grinds millet on a flat stone. The rhythmic scrape sounds soothing, almost musical. The mother hums a tune between breaths, something soft and circular, a melody that might have no beginning or end. She glances at you, smiling faintly. "Hungry?" she asks, gesturing toward the pot. You nod sheepishly. She laughs, ladling out a portion into a bowl. The rice is sticky and fragrant, flavored with spring onions and just a hint of salt. It's not fancy, but it tastes like comfort, warm and familiar, the flavor of ordinary happiness. As you eat, a man enters carrying a bundle of straw on his back. His clothes are dusty, his shoulders glistening with sweat. He greets his family with a tired smile and sits down heavily beside the hearth. His wife hands him a drink of cool water, and for a few moments, the whole family sits together in companionable silence. The daughter giggles at something her father says, and he reaches over to tug playfully at her braid. You watch the scene unfold, realizing that for all the centuries between you, the warmth of family is still instantly recognizable. A quirky tidbit surfaces. Early Chinese families often kept pigs beneath the house, literally. The floors were raised above small pits where pigs were sheltered from the cold. It was practical, if not exactly fragrant. You glance at the clay floor beneath your feet and decide not to investigate further. You step outside, where a few elders sit together in the shade, playing what looks like an early board game. The board is a flat slab of stone scratched with small grooves, and they move seeds or pebbles across it in slow, deliberate turns. One man strokes his beard thoughtfully before making his move, clearly taking this very seriously. The others murmur approval or mild dismay. You can't decipher the rules, but you suspect the objective is less about winning and more about appearing wise while pretending you had a strategy all along. One of the elders glances up at you and grins. "Watching doesn't help," he says. "You'll still lose." You laugh, bowing slightly. Historians still argue whether these kinds of games were purely recreational or had ritual or predictive purposes. Some believe they represented cosmic patterns, the movement of stars or seasons, used to teach balance and foresight. Others think people just like to compete without throwing punches. A breeze stirs the reeds nearby, carrying the smell of baked clay and cooked grain. You wander through the village as the afternoon light softens. Children nap in shaded corners. A woman sweeps her courtyard, the bristles whispering across the ground. Two men argue half-heartedly over a fishing net's repair, then end up sharing a smoke and laughing anyway. The whole settlement moves like one body breathing. Inhale, exhale, work, rest, repeat. In the distance, someone starts playing a bamboo flute again. The melody winds gently through the air, calm and melancholic. A small group gathers around to listen, some leaning against walls, others sitting cross-legged on the ground. The music doesn't demand attention, it offers it, softly, like a hand reaching out in the dark. You sit too, letting the sound sink in. The song seems to mirror the river's flow, slow, constant, ancient. As the sun begins to dip, families prepare for evening. Smoke rises from hearths, carrying the aroma of roasted vegetables and boiling herbs. You spot one family lighting small lamps made from hollowed gourds, their soft glow flickering across the walls. Shadows stretch long, merging with twilight. Children's laughter fades as they're called inside. Somewhere, a dog barks once, then settles. You realize that the rhythm of daily life here is anchored not by clocks or schedules, but by the sun itself. Morning to evening, light to shadow, effort to rest. It's the most natural kind of order. You find a quiet spot near the riverbank, sitting beneath a willow tree. The branches sway gently, brushing against the water. Across the river, you can see the faint silhouettes of other settlements, their fires twinkling like tiny stars. You imagine other families there, other voices, other songs, echoes of the same peaceful existence repeated along the river's curve. A thought crosses your mind. Civilizations are remembered for their empires, but they're built by their ordinary days, by the people who cooked, cleaned, played, laughed, and worked without ever knowing they were part of history. You exhale slowly, letting that realization sink in like a pebble dropping into still water. The wind shifts, carrying the cool scent of evening mist. You pull your robe a little tighter around your shoulders, listening to the quiet hum of insects. The village lights flicker like fireflies behind you, their glow warm and steady. Somewhere, a baby cries, then is soothed with a soft lullaby that fades into the night. You smile faintly, your heart oddly full. The day here is ending, but life, simple, content, eternal, flows on, just like the yellow river beside you. Dawn returns with a shimmer on the river's surface, the kind of light that makes the world look newly made. Mist drifts lazily across the water, and the faint clang of a distant bell echoes through the cool air. You wake to the smell of wet earth and grain steaming somewhere nearby. Today, you'll spend your time where all things begin and end in this civilization, the fields. You follow a narrow dirt path that winds between low walls of mud and woven reeds, leading out of the village and into the wide open expanse of farmland. The ground is damp beneath your feet, soft from last night's dew. Ahead, farmers are already at work, their figures bent against the light, moving in calm, steady rhythm. Wooden plows creak. Water buffalo snort softly, tails flicking. A flock of egrets strolls lazily through the shallows, their reflections rippling in the muddy water. You join them at the edge of a paddy, where a man, barefoot, his legs covered in mud up to his knees, grins at you before gesturing to a nearby basket. It's filled with seedlings, bright green and fragrant. "Help?" he asks good-naturedly. You nod, and soon your feet sink into the cool sludge. It's surprisingly soothing, like walking through warm pudding, if pudding also contained tiny eels. You try to mimic his movements, planting seedlings in neat rows. The work is hypnotic. Plant, press, step, repeat. The mainstream historical fact comes to mind. The earliest Chinese dynasties thrived because of irrigation along the Yellow River. They mastered water management, building canals, levees, and basins long before written engineering records existed. This mastery turned the river's unpredictable floods into fertile blessing rather than disaster. You can almost feel that ingenuity in the rhythm of the farmer's work, every motion both ancient and precise. As you work, the man beside you hums softly, something tuneless but soothing. You notice that every few rows he pauses, looks up at the sky, and squints. You follow his gaze but see only a lazy hawk circling overhead. "Checking for rain," he explains, though no clouds threaten yet. The farmers here read the sky like scripture. Wind, color, the taste of air, all clues to the river's next mood swing. A woman walks by with two baskets balanced on a shoulder pole. One holds fresh water, the other rice seedlings. She moves gracefully despite the load, barely disturbing the mud beneath her feet. She stops to chat briefly with the man beside you, something about a missing hoe and a mischievous goat, from what you can gather through their gestures and laughter. You smile to yourself. Farming might be timelessly hard work, but gossip, it seems, is an even older tradition. As the sun rises higher, the fields shimmer like sheets of gold and green. Frogs croak lazily from the ditches, and dragonflies hover like tiny lanterns above the water. You can hear the rhythmic squelch of footsteps, the splash of buckets, the occasional shout as someone calls across the fields. It's the music of labor, steady and strangely soothing. The man beside you stops for a moment, straightens his back, and wipes sweat from his brow. He points toward a small earthen ridge at the field's edge. You follow him there, grateful for the break. He pulls out a gourd of water and offers it to you. It's cool, slightly sweet with a hint of mineral tang. You thank him, sitting on the ridge as you watch others continue the work. A quirky tidbit floats into your mind. Some early farmers believed singing to rice seedlings encouraged them to grow stronger. Songs carried over the fields like a form of ancient motivation, a blend of hope, rhythm, and superstition. And really, who's to say it didn't help? You listen closely and realize you can hear faint singing across the valley, high, slow notes carried by the breeze. Maybe it's not about the rice growing taller, you think. Maybe it's about the people feeling lighter. From your perch, you can see a network of irrigation ditches snaking across the land like veins. Some are lined with stone, others just dug into the earth, guiding water from the river in careful balance. The villagers use wooden shovels to adjust flow, plugging holes with straw or diverting water to drier sections. It's a constant dance between control and surrender, human intention meeting the river's unpredictable will. Historians still argue whether these systems were organized communally or overseen by early local leaders. Some evidence suggests coordinated labor on a large scale, implying that social hierarchies may have emerged around the need to manage water. Others claim it was simpler, a cooperative survival pact between neighboring families. You look around at the farmers calling instructions, passing tools, and sharing jokes. Whatever the truth, the cooperation here feels instinctive, not enforced. By midday, the heat thickens. You retreat beneath a willow tree, joining a small group of farmers for their meal. They unpack woven baskets filled with steamed millet, pickled vegetables, and roasted fish wrapped in leaves. You sit cross-legged among them, sharing what they offer. The food tastes of salt and smoke, perfectly balanced by the sweetness of the river breeze. One man passes around a small jug of rice beer, its aroma sour and faintly fruity. You take a cautious sip. It's rough, but oddly refreshing. The laughter around you swells, and for a moment, you're just another villager, squinting against the sunlight and wiping rice from your chin. After eating, a few of them stretch out in the shade for a nap. One man lies on his back with his hat covering his face, snoring softly. Another sits with his feet in the water, idly tossing pebbles at a curious fish. Time slows to the pace of the river itself, unhurried, unbothered. You let your eyes drift shut for a moment, listening to the cicadas buzzing overhead. When you wake, the light has shifted, softer now, warmer. Work resumes, slower this time, the urgency of morning replaced by a kind of meditative calm. You wander further down the embankment to where a group of women are threshing grain. They beat stalks against wooden frames, laughter punctuating the rhythmic thuds. Golden chaff flutters through the air like dust made of sunlight. One of the women notices you watching and beckons. She hands you a bundle of grain and demonstrates. Raise, strike, shake. You mimic her motion. The grains scatter, some sticking to your arms, others bouncing into a shallow basket. She laughs when one stalk hits you in the face. Too gentle, she teases. You try again, harder this time, earning an approving nod. As the sun lowers toward the horizon, the work slows, then stops. The farmers gather near the water channel, rinsing mud from their legs and tools. Someone starts another song, a slow, echoing tune that drifts across the fields like a farewell to the day. It's joined by others until the entire group hums along, the harmony imperfect but deeply human. You stand on the ridge, looking out at the landscape glowing gold in the fading light. The fields stretch endlessly, the river glimmering in the distance like a living thread connecting everything: villages, people, generations. The smell of wet soil, crushed grass, and smoke fills your lungs. You think about how every handful of grain here represents centuries of quiet endurance. No wars, no palaces, just people and patience. Somewhere behind you, a farmer laughs and tosses you a leftover seedling. You catch it awkwardly. For luck, he says simply. You nod, tucking it behind your ear like a flower. It feels absurd and sacred at the same time. The sky deepens into rose and amber. Frogs begin their evening chorus. The river murmurs softly, reflecting the last flickers of sunlight. You walk back toward the village with the farmers, their silhouettes long and soft against the glowing horizon. No one rushes. There's no need. The work is done, and tomorrow it will begin again. You glance back one last time. The paddies glisten under the fading light, each one a mirror of the sky. For all its mud and toil, the scene is strangely beautiful. proof that harmony isn't born from ease, but from rhythm, repetition, and care. You breathe out slowly, the scent of rice and water lingering in the air. Civilization, you realize, isn't built in bursts of brilliance, but in days like this, quiet, ordinary, endlessly repeating. Evening drapes itself gently over the village, turning the air soft and gold. The river glows like liquid metal, rippling beneath the light of the setting sun. Smoke rises in thin threads from the rooftops, some from hearth fires, some from clay ovens baking the night's meal. The day's labor has quieted, leaving behind a kind of peaceful exhaustion. You follow the familiar footpath back toward the settlement, past a row of houses made of earth and reed, their walls warm to the touch from the sun's lingering heat. The smell of food fills the air, steamed rice, spiced fish, something sweet like roasted beans or honey. Crickets chirp in the grass, dogs bark lazily at nothing in particular. The entire village feels alive in a softer, slower way now, winding down from the day's rhythm into the calm of evening. Children run barefoot through the dusty lanes, chasing each other with sticks that glow faintly in the twilight. They giggle, shriek, then vanish behind walls, leaving only echoes of laughter. A group of elders sits outside one house, their voices low and steady as they weave baskets, mend nets, or simply watch the world settle. The smoke from their small fire curls upward, carrying the faint scent of herbs. You're invited to join a family for supper. A farmer you met in the fields earlier waves you over. His wife, her hair tied in a simple knot, is stirring something thick and fragrant in a clay pot. You sit cross-legged on a mat woven from reeds, feeling the slight roughness of the fibers beneath your palms. The room is dim but cozy, lit by a single oil lamp. Shadows dance across the walls as the flame flickers. The meal begins with quiet gratitude. Bowls are passed around, steamed millet, pickled radish, grilled fish. The flavors are simple but comforting. Each bite carries the taste of the land and river, the reward of the day's labor. Conversation hums gently around you. Talk of the coming harvest, a sick calf, a neighbor's newborn child. The words are soft, rhythmic, like the murmur of a stream. You notice something familiar yet ancient in the way they eat. No rush, no distraction, just the act itself treated with care. Meals are not only for nourishment here, they're for connection. In that way, this quiet dinner is a reflection of early civilization itself, a small group bound by survival, ritual, and shared time. After the meal, the farmer's son, no more than 8 or 9, brings out a wooden flute. He sits near the doorway and begins to play, softly at first. The tune is slow, winding, imperfect, but sincere. The notes flow through the open window into the warm evening air, where others in the village begin to hum along. You can hear faint singing from the neighbor's courtyard, an old melody, maybe something passed down through generations. There's a calm unity in it, like the entire settlement breathes in the same rhythm. The stars begin to appear, first one, then several, shimmering faintly in the purpling sky. The moon hangs low, pale and serene. You step outside after dinner. The night has deepened, cool and hushed, except for the constant whisper of insects. The village glows faintly with lamplight, the river beyond catching glimpses of the moon. It's a view that could belong to any century, any place. Down the path, a group gathers near the communal hearth, a space at the village center where people meet at dusk. You walk closer, drawn by the soft murmur of conversation and the glow of the fire. Sparks rise into the night, carried upward until they vanish into the dark. Around the flames, men and women sit together, legs folded, their faces warm in the light. Someone tells a story, slowly, with pauses and gestures that make the tale feel like a living thing. The story seems to be about a river spirit, an ancient being who blesses those who respect the water and punishes those who waste it. The listeners nod solemnly, though some smile at the more dramatic parts. It's half cautionary tale, half memory. You realize that in a world so dependent on the river, mythology becomes a kind of moral compass. To mistreat the water is to endanger life itself. A man beside you, older and quiet until now, whispers, "Our grandfathers say the river has moods. When it sleeps, crops grow. When it wakes angry, fields drown." He looks into the flames, thoughtful. So we listen, always listen. The fire crackles. For a while, no one speaks. The night hums softly, filled with the sound of frogs and the distant rush of water. The villagers' faces glow in orange light, lined, weary, content. You can't help but think of how such gatherings must have been the first kind of culture, the beginning of shared memory, belief, identity. It's in these fireside moments that history itself takes shape, not through kings or conquests, but through simple retellings of how to live. The rhythm of the seasons, the rules of planting, the stories that explain the wind and rain, all woven together into something both practical and sacred. The fire burns lower, lullaby-like tune. Her voice is rough but soothing. The lyrics, though you don't understand them, feel like an invocation. The melody wraps around the night like a blanket. Children nearby yawn and lean against their mothers. One falls asleep with his head in her lap, clutching a small wooden toy shaped like a bird. The fire burns lower. People begin to rise, stretching, murmuring their good nights. Some head back to their homes, carrying torches that bob gently through the darkness. You remain by the fire a while longer, watching the last embers glow. The air smells of smoke and damp grass. Somewhere far off, an owl calls. You think about how little life here has changed across thousands of years. These small, unrecorded evenings are the real texture of civilization. The quiet hours between work and rest, between survival and story. Empires may rise and fall, but this moment of people gathered around a fire endures. You finally stand, brushing the dust from your clothes, and follow the narrow path back to the edge of the river. The water gleams like polished stone under the moonlight. You kneel and dip your fingers into the cool current. It feels alive, endlessly flowing towards something unseen. The same water that nourished crops today will drift downstream tomorrow, feeding other lands, other lives. In the distance, you can see a few last lanterns flickering in the windows. Somewhere nearby, a dog sighs in its sleep. The world has gone still except for the gentle lap of water against the bank. You lie back on the grass, eyes on the sky. Stars scatter above you like grains of rice spilled across black silk. You let your thoughts drift about the fields, the meals, the songs. About how each generation adds a small note to the same long melody. Civilization, you realize, isn't a monument or an invention. It's this, the patience to repeat, the faith to plant again, the tenderness of shared evenings that make tomorrow possible. The air cools further. You pull your cloak closer and listen. The river hums softly beside you, ancient and eternal. The last sparks from the village hearth fade into darkness, and in that darkness, you feel an odd, peaceful certainty that nothing is ever truly lost. The rhythm continues, quiet and unbroken. As your eyes grow heavy, you think of the story told by the fire, the river spirit, the listening, the calm acceptance of the world's cycles. You understand it now. To live here is to listen, to the water, the soil, the stars, and to the silence that follows. Sleep comes slowly, like the tide. The earth beneath you is cool and solid, the night air gentle against your face. You hear a whisper of wind through the reeds, like a final lullaby. The last thing you see before your eyes close completely is the reflection of the moon on the moving river, soft, steady, eternal. Morning comes wrapped in a faint silver mist that clings to the surface of the yellow river. You wake to the sound of hoofs clopping against packed earth, slow and rhythmic, joined by the creak of wooden wheels. A caravan is forming along the riverbank, a long procession of carts, animals, and people preparing to leave the village. You stretch, rub the sleep from your eyes, and feel that familiar tug of curiosity again. The world beyond the valley is calling. Someone shouts directions. A farmer ties bundles of dried grain to a mule saddle. Another man adjusts the straps on a wagon piled with pottery wrapped in straw. The smell of leather, hay, and damp soil fills the morning air. You can almost taste the dust already, the faint grit of roads stretching endlessly beyond the horizon. You fall into step beside the travelers, not really invited, but not unwelcome either. That's the thing about ancient roads. They belong to anyone willing to walk them. The path hugs the edge of the river for a while, winding between willows and patches of morning fog. Then it turns inland, where low hills rise like sleeping animals, soft and green beneath the mist. The lead trader, a wiry man with a short beard and bright eyes, explains that the caravan is heading toward a distant city, one that trades in salt, bronze, and silk. You nod, pretending to know where that is. He laughs. No one really knows, he says. It just takes as long as it takes. You walk for hours, the rhythm of travel soothing and hypnotic. Bells tied around the oxen's necks chime gently with each step. The road is uneven, littered with stones and old cart ruts. Every so often, you pass a shrine at a crossroads, a small stone figure smeared with red pigment, surrounded by offerings of fruit or coins. The traders bow slightly as they pass, murmuring short prayers for safe travel. Superstition and survival hand in hand. As the morning fades into afternoon, the landscape widens. You see terraces of farmland stitched across the hillsides, the occasional watchtower standing alone in the distance. Smoke rises from a cluster of huts far off, perhaps another village. Every so often, someone points out a landmark, a gnarled tree, an oddly shaped rock, a bend in the road that legend says was made by a dragon's tail. The road is part of an old trade route, one of the early arteries that carried goods and ideas between regions long before anyone called it an empire. Along these dusty paths, jade from the western mountains met bronze tools from the river valleys, and gossip about distant rulers flowed as easily as goods. You stop to rest at a way station, a few huts near a well. The water is cold, clear, and faintly sweet. A group of women from a nearby hamlet brings food to sell: flatbread baked on hot stones, dried fish, and jars of pickled vegetables. The travelers buy eagerly, trading coins and salt lumps. Someone begins playing a two-stringed instrument, its melody thin and haunting in the open air. It's during these pauses that stories spread fastest. One trader claims he once saw the emperor's capital, a city so vast that it took a full day just to walk from one gate to the next. Another swears he heard rumors of lands where the people have blue eyes and speak in cliques, though no one's sure if that's true or just a traveler's dream. Historians still argue whether these early trade routes were truly connected. That is, if goods from faraway places ever really reached the Yellow River settlements this early. But looking around at the mix of people, the fabrics, the accents, you can feel how ideas and objects moved even when maps didn't yet exist. The exchange of stories was as valuable as the exchange of goods. You help push a wagon stuck in the mud, your hands sinking into the soft earth. Someone jokes that this happens every journey. Proof perhaps that even in ancient times, not all roads led smoothly anywhere. Everyone laughs, the kind of tired laughter that makes hardship bearable. The caravan moves on. You pass through a shallow valley where the air smells faintly of sulfur. The ground here is pale, almost white, and steam rises in thin wisps from the soil. The trader explains this place is known as the Dragon's Breath, a patch of earth that never cools, even in winter. Scholars now might call it geothermal activity, but back then, it was a sign that spirits still stirred beneath the land. A little farther along, you spot an abandoned hut leaning at an angle, half swallowed by vines. The roof has caved in, but on the wall, you notice faded markings, symbols scratched into the clay. The trader glances at them, frowning. Bandit warnings, he says quietly, or so they say. He explains that in these days, travelers risked not only weather and hunger, but ambushes from roaming thieves. That's why caravans stayed large and well-armed. You glance at the guards walking alongside, their spears gleaming dully in the light. Despite the calm rhythm of the road, there's always an edge of danger. One more reason these journeys were respected, even mythologized. The sun begins to sink, the sky melting into warm shades of orange and rose. You hear laughter ahead and see that the caravan has stopped for the night near a small stream. Tents are pitched, fires lit. Someone's boiling rice in a large pot while another feeds the mules. You sit down near a group of traders who are comparing calices, bragging about who's carried the heaviest load. Dinner is simple: rice, dried fish, and bitter tea. The laughter around the fires feels lighter now, the kind that only comes after long hours of shared labor. The trader with bright eyes tells another story, this one about a ghost who follows caravans and only appears when someone lies about the weight of their goods. The others groan, mockingly clutching their purses. You notice that for these travelers, superstition isn't just belief, it's community. Stories keep fear in check, turning danger into something almost friendly. The ghost tales, the dragon marks, the shrines, they're part of the same thread that binds everyone together in the vast uncertainty of the world. You lie back after eating, the fire crackling nearby. The night sky here is endless. The Milky Way spills across it like powdered rice. A gentle breeze carries the scent of burning wood and horses. One of the guards hums a low tune, something wordless and ancient. The trader beside you points upward. That's the Weaver Girl, he says, gesturing to a cluster of stars. And that one over there is the cowherd. They meet once a year when the magpies build a bridge for them. You've heard the legend before. It's one of love and patience, born from the same river valleys where people still watch the stars in wonder. There's a long silence after that. The fire pops, sparks drifting up toward the heavens. You can't help but feel the quiet intimacy of the moment, the way the land stretches endlessly around you, yet everyone here feels connected by something unseen. As your eyes grow heavier, you think about what these journeys mean. They're not just about trade or adventure. They're the arteries through which civilization breathes. Without these roads, without the people willing to walk them, ideas would stagnate, innovation would fade. Every traveler, in a small way, carries the story of humanity forward. And maybe that's the real truth behind the legends. Not dragons or ghosts, but endurance. The courage to keep moving, to trust that the next village, the next dawn, will always arrive. The wind shifts, cool and steady, brushing through the grass. You close your eyes, listening to the river somewhere far off, knowing it's still flowing beside you even when unseen. The caravan sleeps, the stars keep their patient watch, and the road, stretching endlessly into tomorrow, waits quietly for you to begin again. The morning air is crisp as you wake beside the caravan, dew still clinging to the grass around your resting place. The sun peeks over the hills in soft gold, casting long shadows across the tents and wagons. The river glints in the distance, a calm, constant ribbon of silver threading through the landscape. Today, you'll venture into the markets of a nearby town where life hums with commerce, conversation, and curiosity. You follow the traders along the cobblestone streets of the town, weaving between carts laden with grain, baskets of vegetables, and piles of earthenware. The sounds are different here than in the village. The clatter of wooden wheels on stones, the chatter of bargaining voices, the occasional bray of a mule. The smells are richer too. Fresh fish mingles with roasted herbs, spilled wine, and the faint tang of leather. Every sense seems heightened by the sheer density of life. Merchants call out their wares with practiced enthusiasm. Fresh millet, straight from the fields. Jade beads, polished by the riverbanks. You pause to watch a potter's apprentice wheel a small clay jug, hands deftly shaping it as customers glance and nod approvingly. Nearby, a man hammers a bronze gong until it gleams, the ringing sound echoing off the town walls. A mainstream historical fact drifts through your mind. They were social hubs where information, culture, and gossip flowed as freely as goods. Even during the early dynasties, towns along the Yellow River were connected by a network of trade, both local and long distance, creating a dynamic, constantly evolving social space. You move toward a stall where a woman sells textiles. Rolls of dyed silk are stacked neatly, each color more vibrant than the last. Reds like autumn leaves, blues like the river at midday, and yellows as soft as sunlight through reeds. You run your fingers lightly across the fabric. One pattern catches your eye: interlocking waves, perfectly rhythmic and calming. She notices your fascination and explains. Each color tells a story, each wave a season. You smile faintly, realizing that even decoration here carries meaning. Quirky traditions surface in your thoughts. Some townspeople believed that buying fabric on certain days would bring luck or ward off illness. Colors weren't just aesthetic, they were talismans of prosperity, protection, or romantic fortune. You chuckle softly, thinking that superstition seems to follow humans wherever civilization sprouts. A group of children runs past, squealing as they chase a small wooden ball. One trips and falls into a shallow puddle, splashing water onto a merchant's table. The adults barely flinch. It's a scene repeated countless times in countless towns, a universal ritual of youthful chaos. The merchant simply shakes his head and rearranges his goods, muttering something that may be mild annoyance or faint amusement. You drift toward the center of the market, where a raised platform hosts storytellers, musicians, and the occasional acrobat. A man plucks a stringed instrument, the melody lilting and hypnotic. His fingers move so deftly you almost don't notice the nimble feet of the acrobat leaping across small benches. Children gather close, eyes wide with wonder, while adults sip from small cups of tea or sake, occasionally nodding in appreciation. Historians still argue whether these public performances were primarily entertainment or had ritualistic and political purposes. Some believe they were community bonding exercises, a way for townsfolk to reinforce social cohesion. Others argue they subtly reinforced hierarchies, showcasing skills deemed valuable or highlighting the patronage of wealthier citizens. Either way, the result is unmistakable: connection. You move to a stall selling small clay figurines. Each one is delicate, some shaped like animals, others like tiny humans frozen mid-motion. You pick up a miniature horse and run your thumb along its smooth back. The artisan behind the stall smiles. "Good for luck and travel," he says, echoing a sentiment you've encountered before. You nod, amused by the repetition of belief and charm, universal threads in human culture. A few steps away, a man sells preserved fruits, candied nuts, and jars of honey. The sweetness is overwhelming, even in small bites. He offers you a piece of dried plum, and the tang hits your tongue like a soft shock of flavor. People barter, laugh, gesture, and sometimes argue, always returning eventually to compromise, a balance between necessity and social grace. You glance toward a distant archway where banners flutter in the morning breeze. Each bears the insignia of a local guild or family, a subtle reminder of the layered hierarchies operating quietly beneath the town's apparent chaos. You watch as a few young apprentices run errands for their masters, carrying messages or goods with an almost ceremonial precision. It's mundane, yes, but also essential to the smooth function of town life. Nearby, a small shrine has been set up on a corner of the marketplace. Incense curls upward, mingling with the sense of spices and river mud. People pause to bow, offer coins, or whisper a brief prayer before moving on. You notice the juxtaposition of commerce and spirituality, a dance repeated in towns everywhere, binding the practical with the sacred. A quirky tidbit drifts into your mind. Some merchants would secretly hide charms inside their goods, believing it would ensure safe journeys for buyers or ward off theft. The invisible presence of magic, superstition, and ritual seems to permeate even the most ordinary transactions. By mid-afternoon, the market begins to thin as travelers move on and villagers return home. You pause to watch a small troupe performing a shadow puppet play, their tiny figures flickering on a linen screen. The story is familiar. Heroes, rivers, spirits, and the delicate negotiation between human desire and natural forces. Children sit cross-legged, enthralled, while adults smile knowingly, appreciating both the narrative and the craftsmanship. You wander toward the river edge again, where merchants are loading goods into boats. The river sparkles in the afternoon sun, and the smell of water mingles with the earthy scent of wet clay. Some goods are destined for distant settlements, others for towns downstream. You can see the continuity here. The same river that nourished fields now carries commerce, stories, and culture to new places. The traders invite you aboard a small boat. You step carefully onto the wooden deck, feeling it sway beneath your weight. The oars dip rhythmically into the water, sending ripples across the surface. You watch as the town shrinks behind you, its bustling streets becoming a mosaic of color and movement, a memory suspended in sunlight. Historians still argue whether riverine trade or overland caravan routes had greater influence in spreading culture and goods in early dynasties. Some evidence points to a mix, both essential, each compensating for the limitations of the other. As you glide along the water, you realize it hardly matters. The rhythm of trade, human ingenuity, and cultural exchange is inseparable from the landscape itself. The boat drifts quietly, the oars dipping in perfect unison, carrying the weight of goods, stories, and people downstream. You close your eyes briefly, listening to the gentle splash of water and the distant calls of merchants and children. The marketplace, alive, chaotic, sacred, ordinary, already feels like a memory stitched into the river's endless flow. The sun sinks low, painting the water in shades of gold and amber. Shadows lengthen across the deck. You lean back, feeling the gentle sway of the boat, thinking about all the hands that have moved goods across this river. Hands like yours, unknown and unrecorded, yet vital. Civilization is built not just in empires or monuments, but in markets, in rivers, in the quiet diligence of ordinary lives. As the evening mist begins to settle, you sense the town behind you fading, leaving only the soft hum of human activity, the scent of fresh water, and the promise of tomorrow's journey. You close your eyes, letting the river's rhythm carry you, peaceful and unhurried, toward the quiet of night. The boat glides gently along the yellow river, its current soft but insistent, guiding you toward the next village. Morning light spills across the water, glinting on small ripples, as if the river itself is alive, breathing. Mist clings to the banks, curling around reeds and low-hanging willows. The distant hills are shrouded in haze, faint silhouettes waiting to be explored. You lean over the edge, letting your fingers trail through the cool water, feeling the gentle tug of the current. Fishermen are already at work along the shallows, standing barefoot on flat stones or mud banks, spears poised with the patience of someone who knows the rhythm of the river intimately. One casts a net with a fluid, practiced motion, sending it arcing into the water before it lands with a soft splash. Moments later, he pulls it back, revealing a wriggling collection of small fish. You watch, fascinated by the balance of skill, timing, and luck. A mainstream historical fact surfaces, fishing along the Yellow River was a cornerstone of sustenance for many early Chinese settlements. The river provided protein, trade goods, and a connection to distant regions via waterways. Nets, spears, and traps evolved over centuries, refined through trial and error, passed down as practical knowledge within families and communities. You notice a curious scene nearby. A man perched atop a small raft, tied together with reeds, his hat low over his eyes. He's tossing tiny fish into the air before catching them again, a practice you later learn is called flipping fish, meant to keep them alive and healthy until market day. Quirky, yes, but it shows ingenuity and patience. It also gives you the odd impression that he's performing for an invisible audience, perhaps amused by the drama of mundane life. The riverbank is alive with small settlements. Children run barefoot through the mud, chasing ducks or skipping stones, their laughter bouncing across the water. Women carry baskets brimming with vegetables, their steps light and rhythmic, while men repair boats or tend to small gardens. You stroll among them, observing, learning, absorbing the everyday patterns that constitute life here. Historians still argue whether these settlements functioned as fully independent villages or loosely organized clusters of households tied together by kinship and shared labor. Looking at the communal spaces, the way people share resources, and the informal but respected authority of elders, it seems the distinction between independence and interdependence might be more fluid than modern definitions allow. You approach a small clearing where women are weaving mats from reeds, their hands moving in hypnotic repetition. The pattern is complex yet familiar, like the reflection of the river itself. One woman notices your gaze and offers a gentle smile, beckoning you closer. You pick up a few reeds and try to mimic her movements. Your first attempts are clumsy. The reeds twist, slip, and snap. She laughs softly, correcting your fingers with careful patience. You realize the motion is as much about rhythm as technique, a flow that matches the pulse of daily life along the river. Nearby, a group of elders sits cross-legged, sharing a simple meal of rice, dried fish, and roasted beans. They speak quietly, occasionally pointing toward the river or exchanging notes about planting schedules and fishing patterns. You can sense that knowledge here is passed orally, in observation, and in subtle correction. Every gesture, every glance carries the weight of generations. A small boy carries a clay jug, wobbling dangerously as he moves between households. One of the elders calls out, "Steady!" He straightens instantly, eyes focused, and delivers the water safely. You can't help but smile at the simple human drama, a test of skill, attention, and care played out hundreds of times a day across this landscape. The sun climbs higher, warm but not oppressive. A woman spreads fresh laundry on a line, the fabrics catching the light like watercolors. A man mends a fishing net, threading twine through tiny loops with the precision of someone who has done this 1,000 times. Nearby, a child kneels by a small clay stove, stirring a pot of millet with the solemnity of ritual. You realize that the river is the unifying thread for all this activity. It provides water for crops, fish for meals, and transport for goods. It dictates the rhythm of daily life, from the first light of dawn to the final glow of sunset. Everything is measured against its flow, its moods, and its generosity. A quirky tidbit drifts into your mind. Some communities believe that speaking softly to the river would encourage fish to bite, or that tossing a coin upstream could bring luck to the household. Rituals and superstition coexist with practicality in ways that feel seamless, natural, and quietly comforting. By afternoon, you find yourself helping unload a small boat at a riverside dock. Baskets of millet, fish, and pottery are lifted, passed hand to hand, and stacked carefully along the banks. The work is repetitive, rhythmic, soothing. You notice the small details, the soft thump of baskets on wooden planks, the occasional splash as a fish wriggles free, the smell of wet clay mixing with river mud. The villagers pause briefly to rest, lean against posts or sitting on flat stones. A group of children mimics the adults, lifting empty baskets with exaggerated efforts, giggling at each other's clumsiness. A woman wipes sweat from her brow and hums a tune, soon joined by another, then another, until a faint chorus rises along the river. The music feels unintentional, yet it harmonizes perfectly with the movement of the water. Historians still debate whether music in early Chinese villages was primarily ritualistic or communal. Some argue it marked ceremonies, while others claim it was woven into daily labor to maintain rhythm and morale. Listening to these spontaneous melodies, you can't help but feel it serves both purposes simultaneously, a natural soundtrack to life itself. As the day stretches, you wander further along the bank, observing a man repairing a small reed raft. His fingers twist fibers expertly, tying knots that will hold against the river's force. A curious duck approaches, pecking at loose straw, and he shoos it away gently, muttering something you can't catch. You imagine that the man has done this countless times, yet he treats each repair as a small, important ceremony. The river bends slightly, revealing a cluster of houses built on stilts. Water laps softly beneath them, and bamboo poles support small gardens. Children fish from the decks, their laughter mingling with the rhythmic slap of oars from passing boats. Women tend to herbs and vegetables, humming under their breath. The sense of continuity is palpable. The river has nurtured this way of life for centuries, and generations have shaped their days around it. The sun begins its slow descent, painting the water in soft amber and rose. Smoke rises from hearths, carrying the scent of cooked grains and fish. You realize that the rhythm of life along the river is neither hurried nor stagnant. It flows like the water itself, steady and dependable, full of small miracles unnoticed by outsiders but deeply felt by those who live here. You find a quiet spot beneath a willow tree, its branches brushing against the water. The current murmurs a constant, soothing hum. You sit and watch, letting the river's gentle sway reflect in your thoughts. Civilization here is not made of monuments or battles. It's made of countless small actions repeated daily, sustained by human patience, cooperation, and a deep connection to nature. As evening descends, the villagers light small lamps along the riverbank. The soft glow reflects in the water, doubling the beauty of the scene. Children yawn and settle in, while elders share quiet conversation. The river's song continues, unbroken and eternal, carrying the story of life forward into the night. You close your eyes, breathing in the scent of river mud, fish, and cooking fires. The water laps against the stilts, a gentle rhythm to soothe the mind. The stars begin to emerge above, mirrored faintly in the rippling surface. You feel at once infinitesimal and deeply connected, a witness to the enduring pulse of human life along this ancient river. Night falls quietly, painting the river and village in deep shades of indigo and silver. The air has cooled, carrying the faint scent of damp earth and wood smoke. Lanterns glow along the riverbank, bobbing slightly as water laps against the stilts of houses. You walk slowly among the homes, absorbing the gentle cadence of life winding down, the subtle hum of conversation, and the occasional bark of a dog in the distance. Inside one of the stilt houses, a family prepares for the evening. Women sweep the earthen floors, their brooms whispering across the surface, while men arrange bundles of firewood beside a small hearth. Children chase each other around the interior, squealing softly before collapsing into the laps of older siblings or parents. The warmth of human presence fills the modest space, a kind of domestic gravity that holds everyone together. You sit beside a small fire, its embers glowing faintly in the dim light. A man next to you, older and lined with age, breaks off a piece of dried bread and hands it to a young girl. She giggles, accepting it with reverence, then sneaks a glance at you as if acknowledging your presence in this quiet ceremony. Meals here are both practical and intimate, nourishing not only the body, but also the bonds that keep families and communities strong. A mainstream historical fact comes to mind: domestic life in early Chinese dynasties was structured by routine, ritual, and hierarchy. The arrangement of the home, the division of labor, and even the timing of meals reinforced social structures while providing the stability necessary for survival. Yet, within these constraints, there was flexibility, humor, and warmth, a human resilience quietly woven into daily routines. The family begins a simple evening ritual, lighting incense and offering it to a small shrine tucked into a corner of the room. The smell of sandalwood rises softly, blending with the earthy aroma of cooking and fire. Each person bows, a silent acknowledgement of ancestors or local spirits, and the ritual closes with a gentle nod. You notice the solemnity of it, yet also the comfort, the rhythm that brings closure to the day. Quirky customs surface in your mind. Some households believe that speaking quietly to the shadows of their home would ensure dreams stayed pleasant. Others hung small charms above doorways to ward off mischief or wandering spirits. You smile faintly, realizing that superstition and routine often mingle seamlessly, creating a sense of security and continuity. Outside, the river murmurs softly, carrying the faint reflection of moonlight across its surface. Children run briefly to toss a piece of bread to the ducks, then return to the warmth of the home. Someone hums a low tune, an unstructured melody that echoes across the stilts and water, joining the soft chorus of crickets and frogs. The night feels deliberate yet effortless, like the world itself is breathing in rhythm. You wander down to the riverbank, where a small group of villagers has gathered around the fire. The flames flicker, casting playful shadows across faces and the smooth surface of nearby boats. They share stories in hushed tones, legends of river spirits, heroic ancestors, and strange occurrences that happen when the moon is full. One story involves a fisherman who, according to local belief, could charm fish out of the water simply by whispering to them. The listeners nod respectfully, the story accepted as a mix of caution, humor, and tradition. Historians still debate whether these tales were primarily moral guides, entertainment, or mnemonic devices for practical knowledge. Whatever the case, they reveal the texture of life, how imagination, observation, and social cohesion intertwine to create culture. You listen, letting the cadence of voices and the flickering firelight carry your attention away from time itself. You notice a small wooden flute resting beside a pile of firewood. A young man picks it up and begins to play, softly at first, each note rising and falling like the gentle swell of the river. Soon, others join in, humming, clapping, or tapping sticks lightly against the dock. The sound is imperfect, yet soothing, blending with the natural chorus of water, wind, and insects. It is music made for comfort, for reflection, for being present in the moment. Nearby, someone is weaving reeds, their fingers moving in a hypnotic rhythm. You watch quietly, entranced by the repetitive motion, the silent meditation of craftsmanship. It reminds you of the fields, of planting rice, of weaving mats, of the countless small acts that sustain life along the Yellow River. Each motion, though simple, carries weight, purpose, and continuity. A curious observation crosses your mind. Some villagers leave small offerings along the riverbank at night, believing it will calm the waters and ensure safe passage for the next day's travelers. Perhaps the ritual is symbolic, perhaps protective. It doesn't matter. What matters is the intention, the shared sense of care that permeates every interaction with the river. As the night deepens, the fire burns lower. People begin to drift back toward their homes, the hush of evening settling over the village. Lanterns glow faintly in windows, and the river reflects the star-strewn sky above. The water carries distant echoes of laughter, music, and whispered stories. You feel the unity of human life and the landscape, the seamless rhythm of work, rest, ritual, and celebration. You find a quiet spot near the water, sitting on a flat stone with your feet just brushing the edge. The current laps softly against the shore, steady and eternal. You close your eyes briefly, letting the sound of flowing water and faint music mingle into a single comforting hum. Civilization in these small, quiet villages is not marked by grand monuments or battles, but by ordinary lives repeated and sustained across generations. The night air is cool against your skin. You breathe deeply, tasting the faint smoke, river mist, and earth. Somewhere in the distance, an owl calls, a single, mournful note that blends with the soft chorus of crickets. The villagers sleep now, wrapped in blankets, protected by the rituals, care, and shared knowledge that have carried life along these banks for centuries. You lean back against the earth, letting the soundscape of river, wind, and nocturnal life envelop you. The water continues to move steadily, carrying with it the echoes of countless stories, labors, meals, and songs. You realize that the essence of this civilization is not only in its physical structures or recorded history, but in the quiet, repetitive, patient acts that have allowed life to persist and flourish. As your eyes grow heavy, the glow of lanterns fades from view, leaving only the glimmer of moonlight on the river. The gentle lap of water becomes a lullaby, a reminder that life flows on, constant and unbroken, no matter who is awake to witness it. You drift toward sleep, cradled by the river's rhythm, soothed by the soft chorus of human life, and aware that tomorrow will be another day in this enduring, gentle world. Dawn arrives quietly, brushing the river with soft washes of peach and lavender. The mist hovers low, clinging to the surface of the water and curling around the reeds that line the banks. You wake to the faint scent of wet earth and smoke, the air cool against your skin, and the gentle murmur of villagers beginning their day. Life along the yellow river resumes its delicate, purposeful rhythm. From the stilted homes, the soft clatter of early chores begins. Water carried from the river, fires coaxed to life, and baskets prepared for the day's labor. Children stretch, yawn, and run barefoot along narrow planks, their laughter echoing against the calm water. You follow along, curious about how each household starts their day. The motions are familiar, yet quietly mesmerizing, a choreography repeated countless times across centuries. A mainstream historical fact comes to mind: daily routines in early Chinese dynasties were deeply structured, guided by agricultural needs, seasonal changes, and social hierarchy. Morning was a time for preparation, feeding animals, tending fields, and readying tools for labor. Yet, within this structure, there was room for play, conversation, and improvisation, reflecting a balance between necessity and humanity. You pause at a small dock where fishermen untangle nets and check traps. The nets are heavy with the night's catch, mostly carp and catfish, glinting in the early light. One man hums a low tune as he works, his voice blending with the gentle slap of water against the boats. You notice a child nearby mimicking the movements, learning through repetition, observation, and gentle correction, a subtle way knowledge is passed through generations. Some fishermen believed that talking to the fish or even singing to them would improve the catch. The belief might seem whimsical, yet it reflects a consistent theme in human behavior. Rituals blend seamlessly with practicality, creating a comforting framework for work and life alike. The smell of cooking begins to drift through the air. Women are preparing breakfast over small clay stoves, stirring porridge and roasting beans. You watch as they portion small servings into bowls, their movements efficient yet deliberate. Conversation is low, punctuated by laughter or the occasional gentle scolding of a child. There's a rhythm to these domestic moments, a quiet harmony that mirrors the river itself. Historians still debate how standardized these routines were across settlements. Some evidence suggests that daily life varied widely depending on local geography, climate, and available resources, while other records imply a surprisingly cohesive structure that connected even distant villages through shared practices, festivals, and agricultural timing. The interplay of variation and similarity is part of what makes observing life here endlessly fascinating. You follow a narrow path to the fields where laborers are already at work. Men and women move in tandem, planting, weeding, or checking irrigation channels. The soil is dark and fertile, and the river's nearby presence ensures crops receive both nourishment and life. Children run along the edges, helping where they can or simply playing, their voices a cheerful undertone to the gentle clatter of tools. Nearby, a woman shows you a curious plant she is cultivating, a leafy green used both for food and medicinal purposes. She explains, with a mix of pride and amusement, that some villagers insist talking to it daily will make it grow faster. You chuckle, remembering the fishermen and the fish, realizing that humans have always sought connection to the life they nurture, even if it manifests in slightly strange rituals. The sun rises higher, warming the earth and revealing distant hills shrouded in the faint haze of morning. You walk among the fields, listening to the quiet instructions of elders, the occasional laugh, the murmur of the river, and the whispers of wind through the stalks. There's a sense of continuity here that is almost tangible. The same rhythms have carried countless generations, creating a living link to the past. In one small patch, an elder teaches a child how to measure the depth of irrigation channels using a simple wooden stick. The technique is ancient yet practical, reflecting a blend of observation, intuition, and repeated experience. You realize that much of early civilization consisted of these small acts, knowledge embedded in daily labor, preserved not in books, but in hands, bodies, and memory. You notice the distant sound of a drum being beaten in a neighboring village. Its cadence is slow, deliberate, and oddly calming. Perhaps it marks the passage of time, or signals a communal event. Historians still argue whether such instruments were primarily ceremonial or utilitarian in early dynasties. Whatever its purpose, it blends into the larger symphony of the morning. Water, voices, wind, and human activity creating a gentle orchestration of life. By midday, the sun climbs high, casting warm light over the fields. Children take brief rests, sitting under trees while elders continue to work. Meals are prepared simply: grains, vegetables, and sometimes fish. You join a family for a light repast, sitting cross-legged on a woven mat. Conversation flows quietly, focusing on crops, weather, and small anecdotes. There's humor, humility, and the kind of effortless teaching woven through these interactions. There's humor, humility, and the kind of effortless teaching woven through these interactions. A quirky custom captures your attention. Some families still use small clay figurines in the fields, believing they guard against pests or misfortune. While it might seem trivial, these objects represent an intertwining of belief, care, and attention. a subtle reminder that human ingenuity often blends practicality with imagination. As the afternoon stretches, you help carry water from the river to the fields. The buckets are heavy, but the task is rhythmic and meditative. The cool water splashes against your hands, and the warmth of the sun presses gently against your back. Every movement feels deliberate, a silent acknowledgement of life's necessities and of the river's indispensable role in sustaining them. By late afternoon, the village begins to prepare for evening. The smell of cooking fires drifts once more through the air. Children run along the banks, tossing small sticks into the river, watching them float away. Elders sit and exchange quiet observations, while adults finish chores and prepare meals. The river continues to flow steadily, a patient witness to the endless repetition of human life, and you watch, feeling the deep, comforting pulse of civilization. The sun dips low, painting the river in golden light, and the mist returns, curling softly around the reeds. You find a quiet spot to sit, letting the ambient rhythm of work, water, and conversation wash over you. Civilization, you realize again, is neither grandiose nor fleeting. It is embedded in these small, repeated acts, in the care, observation, and ritual that shape ordinary days into enduring life. As darkness slowly approaches, you watch lanterns flicker on stilted homes and boats alike. The river reflects these tiny lights, multiplied and dancing on the gentle waves. The villagers begin to settle, humming soft tunes, feeding animals, and preparing for the quiet of night. You close your eyes, listening to the river, to the wind through the reeds, to the distant laughter of children now returning home. The rhythm of life here, patient and steady, carries into the evening, ready to begin again with the dawn. The evening settles slowly, stretching shadows across the riverbank and bathing the village in soft hues of amber and indigo. You walk along the edge of the water, feeling the cool mud beneath your bare feet and listening to the gentle lap of waves against stilts and boats. Lanterns glow faintly, casting flickering reflections on the rippling surface, and the air smells faintly of smoke, damp earth, and the lingering aroma of cooking fires. The village exhales as the day ends, and you follow its quiet rhythm. Inside one of the stilted homes, the family is finishing their evening meal. A pot of millet porridge sits on the hearth, steam curling lazily toward the ceiling. Women wipe their hands on cloths, children push crumbs into bowls, and elders lean back, exhaling a quiet satisfaction. Life here is both simple and deliberate, a series of small, mindful acts that maintain not only survival, but also cohesion, comfort, and continuity. A mainstream historical fact floats into your awareness. Evening routines in ancient Chinese villages were structured yet flexible, combining the practical, feeding animals, cleaning hearths, storing tools, with the cultural, ritual offerings, storytelling, and reflection on the day. These routines, repeated for generations, became the backbone of community life, binding people to the river, to the land, and to one another. You step outside again, drawn to the riverbank. Children chase the last hints of daylight, tossing pebbles and laughing softly, while elders settle on low benches or flat stones. The air is cool and calm, carrying the distant calls of nightbirds and the occasional splash of fish in shallow pools. The rhythmic murmur of the river forms a soft backdrop, a timeless lullaby that threads through every gesture and sound. Quirky observations emerge in the quiet. Some villagers still leave tiny offerings along the river's edge, small coins, grains, or charms, believing the water spirits will watch over the community. Others whisper brief wishes to the river or sing tiny tunes to the wind, acts that might seem trivial to outsiders but carry profound meaning and reassurance for those who perform them. A small group gathers near a fire, sharing stories in the fading light. Legends of river spirits, heroic ancestors, and unusual occurrences pass from one voice to another, each retelling slightly different from the last. Historians still debate how much these tales influence daily decision-making versus serving purely as entertainment, yet their presence undeniably strengthens social bonds. Listening, you feel part of this subtle web, connected through shared memory and imagination. You wander closer to the docks, where a lone fisherman checks his nets one last time before calling it a night. The glint of water on scales and the soft splash of fish echo like a secret rhythm, punctuating the gentle hush of evening. His movements are methodical, patient, a silent acknowledgement of the river's unceasing flow and the life it sustains. Nearby, a woman hums softly while weaving a mat, her hands twisting reeds with practiced ease. Children mimic her motions, learning the patterns of labor as naturally as breathing. The air is filled with the soft chorus of effort, intention, and the occasional burst of laughter. Civilization, you realize again, is composed not of monuments or battles, but of repetition, attention, and care. The sun has nearly vanished, leaving a faint afterglow across the river. The water reflects stars slowly appearing in the darkening sky, each one mirrored perfectly in the gentle ripples. A man lights a lantern and sets it afloat, watching it drift downstream. It is a quiet act of hope, ritual, and beauty, a small human gesture that interacts with the timeless rhythm of the river. Historians still argue whether such nightly rituals were primarily religious, symbolic, or simply comforting daily habits. Whatever the answer, you can sense their effect. A community gently anchored, lulled into reflection and rest by small, repeated acts of care. The river, the stars, and the lanterns intertwine to form a living, breathing canvas of ordinary miracles. You settle near the water's edge, letting the soft murmur of the river wash over you. Crickets and frogs create a steady, soothing rhythm, while distant lanterns flicker like earthly stars. You think about the countless hands that have shaped life along these banks. The children who learned to fish and weave, the elders who guided them, and the stories that traveled from mouth to mouth, year to year. The village exhales as night deepens. Fires smolder low, animals settle in for the dark, and humans curl beneath blankets, quietly aware of the river's watchful presence. You breathe in the gentle scent of the earth and water, feeling the slow passage of time and the enduring pulse of civilization. Here, life moves at the pace of water, wind, and ritual, patient, deliberate, and resilient. As you lean back, closing your eyes, the world softens. The river song, the murmur of voices, the distant calls of nocturnal creatures, and the gentle sway of lanterns become a single lullaby. You are cradled in the collective rhythm of countless generations, connected to every ordinary, extraordinary act that has flowed along these banks. The stars stretch endlessly above, mirrored in the quiet river below. Each sparkle carries memory, hope, and continuity. The night is calm, reassuring, and filled with subtle life, a gentle reminder that civilization endures not only in grand events, but in repetition, care, and quiet observance. Slowly, your body relaxes, your mind softens, and the steady cadence of the yellow river carries you toward the realm of dreams. You feel weightless, cradled by the earth, water, and human presence, the pulse of life threading steadily through the night. The night stretches and deepens around you, folding the village into a cocoon of soft shadow and gentle sound. You breathe slowly, feeling the rhythm of the river and the quiet murmur of life settle into your chest. Lanterns flicker, fires glow faintly, and somewhere a dog shifts in its sleep. The world is calm, patient, and infinitely tender, carrying you into its soothing embrace. Every movement along the river, every ripple in the water, every hum of conversation or song blends together, creating a gentle, continuous rhythm. You feel part of this rhythm, a quiet observer among countless generations who have lived, worked, and dreamed along the Yellow River. The pulse of life here is steady, unbroken, a reassuring cadence that carries forward without hurry or interruption. Let the scents, sounds, and soft glow of night guide your thoughts to calm. Imagine the children tucked into warm homes, the elders resting comfortably, and the river flowing endlessly, reflecting the quiet brilliance of stars above. Time feels suspended, folded gently into the ongoing narrative of ordinary, enduring human existence. Slow your breathing. Feel your body sink into the soft night, and allow the river's gentle lullaby to carry your mind further into rest. Here, everything is patient, deliberate, and serene. The ordinary becomes magical in its constancy. Sleep will arrive naturally, and you are safe to drift, cradled by the river, the land, and the lives that continue quietly along its banks. The world softens, the river hums, the stars watch, and you rest. End of script. Sweet dreams.